So mentoring in action, very much this session is about exploring mentoring in action. And as we've mentioned, the professionalisation of both mentoring and coaching through examples of programme practice, and really the very pivotal role of programme manager in doing all of this. And so that's very much the focus. Now, the latest Routledge book, Routledge and EMCC Global, it's a partnership and a collaboration, is due to be published and available for pre-order January, February 2026. And I believe Nicola is going to share some details for you. It's named Mentoring in Practice, A Guide to Success. And it really does showcase some of the best mentoring programs from around the globe. We've got 22 programs that are showcased in the book from around the globe, many of which are featured through the lens of accreditation. So they will have, for example, program accreditation, training accreditation, mentor and program manager accreditation in place. So we're going to look at some of that. So really today is an opportunity to explore program practice and the journey to professionalisation, and sharing some insights from ourselves and also your insights as well. As I've said, many of the case study contributors are here in the session today. So it would be great to share some of those insights. So we thought we'd start in a moment with a question around what's brought you here today. And that will help us in framing the session. I'll come to that in just a moment. Then introducing the book in a bit more detail, the sectors and the case studies. And then really exploring the journey to professionalisation with mentoring and coaching. We thought we'd share with you a couple of fairly generic programme management framework. Then we've got some discussion themes, and we'll try and sort of divide the questions that you may have between Chandana, myself and David into whether it's programme accreditation or the role of the programme manager or developments in mentoring practice. So we'd really encourage you to use the chat box. Pop any questions in the chat box as we go along. Chandana is going to try and group those into themes, and then we'll try and leave plenty of time for discussion, and that's really the main part of the session. And then reflections, returning at the end for any further reflections and any further questions perhaps that we haven't been able to group into those themes that you may have. So to start with, we thought it'd be really useful for both Chandana and David and I, and Cheryl and Nicola, to think about what's brought you here today. So what's on your mind? Is there a particular question that you have in mind that you'd like us to address? As I say, welcome to use the chat box. And if you want to pop your answers there or any particular questions to start with, we'll look at those as we transition through the session. Wonderful to see all the different locations around the globe as well. Yeah, oh, we've got, yeah, so we've got a number of our case study contributors, Elaine here, lovely to see you, which is great. So quite a wide range of those of you that are particularly interested in accreditation specifically. So absolutely, we'll definitely be able to touch on that today. We've got Matt, interested in return on investment. Yeah, that's quite a frequently asked question. Certainly that's one that you often address in our programme, David, the programme manager programme. Great. So AI, yeah, really popular area at the moment. So the use of AI, and of course, some of you may have seen the new EQA accredited programme. So it's definitely something we can touch on. And in fact, David wrote about the use of AI in the book in chapter 10. So absolutely, we can have a look at that. Super. And we've got a few more coming in as well. Yep. So professionalising practice. Thank you. And there's a theme there, isn't there, around evaluation. So evaluation of practice, evaluation of programs. Great. Okay, so that's a really good start. So thanks so much, everyone. Some of those questions may be addressed as we transition through the content. And if not, so we'll leave plenty of time in the second half of the session so we can have a dialogue around there. And I can see as well, we've got Sarah from National Institute for Health and Care Research, possibly Holly as well. So good to see you here today. And a few more of our case study contributors, which is super. Okay, well, thanks everyone. So as I say, Chandana is coming up with some themes for those questions, and as I say, we'll try and answer those as we transition through, and if not, we'll come back to those in the second half of the dialogue session. So as I say, we're going to breeze through those quite rapidly, so we leave plenty of time for your questions and discussion. So just a deeper introduction to the book. So we wanted to do really a programme level investigation into mentoring programmes. So what's happening in relation to practice, what frameworks are organisations using, how are organisations training their programme participants, how are they matching programme participants, how are they supporting them on an ongoing basis in their programmes, how are they evaluating their programmes, and disseminating practice. And this is an interesting area, actually, in particular, the dissemination of practice, because I think we're very good in terms of programme framework development and applying frameworks and recording the findings. The dissemination is something that I think we're building on over time. And of course, one of the purposes of this session is to be able to disseminate the really good practice that we're seeing across these programmes. So David, Chandana, and I we went out globally to request case study contributions. We had a really wide range of organisations come forward to say we'd like to contribute. And we've ended up with 22 organisations and case studies that really are a global representation of mentoring from public sector, healthcare, education, membership organisations and business contexts. As I say, really very much focus on exploring the programme frameworks in practice and also the pivotal role that the programme manager plays in supporting, leading, sponsoring programs. And I think many of the programs, what we see is that the role of the program manager is absolutely critical to the success of these programs, but more on that shortly. So we've got 6 chapters and we've divided the case studies across those 6 chapters. So we've tried to group them. Now, some of the case studies cut across different sectors, but where possible, we've tried to create some synergies around the programmes. So, for example, in chapter 4, we've got public sector and education. We've got one of our EQA accredited programmes, that's the Quality Award for mentoring at Middlesex University. And in fact, Middlesex University both has an accredited mentoring programme and an accredited coaching programme for a really wide range of professionals that are supporting colleagues and students in the university. We've got the Norwegian Armed Forces and the National College of Ireland. So 3 case studies represented there. Chapter 5 is very much a continuation, public sector and higher education. So again, 3 very broad case studies with the British Accounting and Finance Association, Luxembourg University and the University College Cork in Ireland. And then chapter 6 transitions to public sector and healthcare. So here we have for the National Institute for Health and Care Research, the World Health Organization, the NHS in the UK, and the Health Service Executive Ireland. And I think with all of these case studies, there are synergies around the purpose of what they're trying to achieve, and a really broad range of purposes, ranging from talent development to supporting women into senior leadership roles, supporting research professionals to develop in their career, supporting transition and change, supporting particular agendas such as inclusion and diversity. But very much at the heart of each of these programmes is developing people. So development is very much at the heart of each of these programmes, but all, of course, have their own specific and unique purpose and objectives that align to the programme. Chandana's just going to briefly take us through the next 3 collection of case studies, the next 3 chapters. Chandana?
Yeah, so the next chapter, really, we identified those programs which are from non-profit organizations. So really organizations which are either state-owned or a registered charity. So we have the Electricity Supply Board in Ireland, which is an Irish government-owned organization supported by the trustees of the employees as well. And this case study is really unique in the way it links the program to its overall net zero strategy. So very much linked between the program outcomes and the organizational strategy. Then we have Thrive with Mentoring. So Thrive with Mentoring is one of our gold awarded ISMCP organizations. And this is a unique organization. It's a networking women to women. So it's a global organization where the founder of the organization, I don't know, I haven't seen Shivangi's name here, but the program is very much about creating community and a safe place for women to be mentored by women in terms of their leadership and development. And it's also a really interesting case study where, you know, the program is working with very limited resources in terms of program management and the support that they create in including what they call co-leaders within the program as program managers. So a good example for colleagues here who've said that they are looking to develop their own program. And then the last one here in this is the Action for Children, which is a UK-wide organization supporting young people up to the age of 25. And this is a reciprocal mentoring program very much aimed at promoting and developing Black, Asian, and ethnic minority women with a view to kind of emphasizing an organization becoming inclusive and anti-racial in their approach and strategy. So those are 3 examples of nonprofit organizations. And then if you move to the next chapter. So the next chapter we focused on member organizations, those organizations which we kind of termed as membership organization. So we have Mosaic here, which is a reciprocal mentoring program within EMCC Romania. They are using a digital platform in terms of matching their program, and again, showcasing very much of offering a platform for community to develop their practice in mentoring, offering supervision support within that as an example of a program. We have Network Ireland, which is again an impactful membership organization supporting women in business. So this is where women are supported through a mentoring program to develop specific areas of their business and capabilities as business owners. Then we have another case study, which is London Hire, UK. Again, membership organization. The program is called Global Majority Mentoring Program, which is a free and open program for academics and professionals within the UK, very much aimed at building and offering ethnic diversity and developing leaders within organization who are from the majority group, as in the ethnic minority, increasing diversity and inclusion strategy for the organization. And then we have finally got Resilient Pilot, again, a global organization which has a membership of 10,000 airlines pilot. And this program is looking through their evidence-based training to offer mentoring support for those training to become pilots. So a very wide range, again, across different parts of the globe. And the last case study is very much around business. So in terms of the business literature on mentoring, it's obviously identified how mentoring can support business organization. And we've got 5 case studies in this chapter, starting with the one in New Zealand, which is a program, which is a group mentoring program, very much supporting the organization in helping and developing engineers, graduate engineers. The second one here is a program which is again an inter-organizational mentoring program, and it's a program which is based across globally, and is an interesting program that showcases mentoring for talent management. We have the next program, which is based in Poland, and I don't know if Kasia is here. This is an interesting program which showcases reverse mentoring of older colleagues supporting younger members of the organization. Again, a very interesting case study. And then we have a manufacturing company in the UK who focus the mentoring program on meeting some of the challenges of the organization, and then also an automobile company that is using mentoring very much for talent management. And I think we have Andrew here from the automobile company, and maybe we can bring you, Andrew, in at some point to say a little bit more about your case study. I'll hand back to you now, Julie.
Super, thank you. Right, so what we wanted to do as well was just to share with you some of the findings that really came out of those case studies, but also the development towards professionalisation. So over the last 10 to 20 years, the shift towards professionalisation and accreditation. So the book starts really with chapter 2. In chapter 2, we provide an overview of the professional standards and accreditation that underpin the practice of mentoring. Because what we found in those 22 case studies is, as we've said already, and Chandana's illustrated with some of these case studies, is many, if not all, of the organisations are either accredited with one of the EMCC Global frameworks, or organisations are using the frameworks to design, implement and evaluate the programme. So we thought it's probably useful to set out and to start the book with, well, what are these frameworks and what do they offer for those that want to develop and implement and evaluate a robust mentoring and coaching programme. So that's what we do in chapter 2, is set it out, as well as providing the outline of the quality awards, which we'll share a little bit later on in the session, which are designed for those that want to develop a robust training programme for mentors, coaches and programme managers. So we set that out in chapter 2. And then in chapter 3, we then drill down and focus on the role of the programme manager. And of course, some of you will know, in relation to our accreditation frameworks with EMCC Global, that in 2019, David and I, along with a group of colleagues, we created the Programme Manager Standards Framework. So we created the Programme Manager Quality Award, and then embedded within that, we then created the Individual Programme Manager Accreditation. And so that's quite a recent development, because that's 6 years, so 6 years now that's been in development. It's the newest route, along with team coaching, and that's been a little bit slower to really take off. As many of you will know, team coaching has been huge for the last 5 years in relation to development of programmes and accreditation. Programme manager less so, and I think it's because it's quite a niche role. Often what we find with our case studies is that there might be one person that is leading the programme, that is responsible for the programme. And sometimes that one person is responsible for everything. So it might be responsible for the recruitment of participants, the training of participants, the matching and the evaluation. So it can be quite a niche role, huge responsibilities in terms of the programme, but that's what we found. I think that's why it's been a little bit slower perhaps to take off. But what we do in that chapter is we set out the key responsibilities that we've taken both from the standards and from our case study contributors. So what are the case study contributors saying about their role as programme manager, for example? So you'll still find that there in chapter 3. What we then developed, and I'll hand over to David for these next couple of slides, is just a couple of frameworks that might be useful for those of you that are at the stage of developing your programmes. David.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. So we won't go into these in enormous detail, and I think when you look at them, you say, well, that's obvious, and hopefully it is. But certainly, what we found is that from the case studies is that people that are going to be involved need to be engaged. They need to be really involved. And that means explaining to them why it's important, what's the benefit to them, but most importantly as well, what's important to the organisation. We know that there's a correlation between people's perception that the organisation wants this and needs this to happen, and the degree of engagement with the mentors and mentees with the programme. We don't fully understand the psychology of that, but it's very clearly there as a trend. And I think part of that is linked to then the having a clear purpose. So it's individual purpose and corporate purpose. So the alignment between why the individuals are doing this and why the organization is doing this, and sometimes in some of the programs with a wider social purpose in society, it's that sense of doing something that's worthwhile beyond the individual relationship. Being able to respond very quickly to new technology changes in what's happening around the organization. That's fairly obvious, but it really is important. The One of the things that we find many of the programs do is they monitor what are the big issues that people are talking about. They don't want to know the intricacies of the conversation, but they do want to know, what are the things that are being brought to the mentoring discussions, where it might be helpful to provide some additional training or some information or whatever. What are mentors struggling with? And getting that sense of it's connectedness and responsiveness. Having the right resources in place, sometimes the steering committee, sometimes the resources simply to be there to match people effectively, but proper resourcing does make a big difference. Having one of the biggest resources is involvement of top management if it's a corporate program. We know that if top management talks to people about their own experience of mentoring and being mentored and having a mentor, that actually engages people. So we're back to the S in the acronym as well. And the K, it's not just about knowledge transfer in the sense of I'll tell you how to do things. It's much more about that tacit understanding, the sense of continuity within an organization, which is why so many of the programs that have linked people who are retiring from the organization, for example, with people coming up to take their places, that understanding of the history and the experience that actually makes a difference when the same old problems come round again. So these 5 things, the acronym SPARK is just another word, but it actually has it's about illuminating things. It's about putting energy into the relationships that people have. So that's a brief explanation of it. You'll find a lot more explanation in the book itself. Do you want to look at the next slide?
Yeah, right. Thanks, David.
There we go. So this simple little wheel is one that we've used in the program manager training, which Julie Chandana and I have been doing for quite some time now. And you can see it all starts, but it is a cycle. But it starts with planning. What are we trying to do? Why are we doing this? Who are we doing it for? How do we, and so forth. All those fundamental questions that we're spending some money in preparation, some time and money in preparation saves a lot of hassle later. Then thinking about who are our mentors and mentees going to be. And sometimes it's not as obvious as it might be. We've got a mentoring program now with schools, with kids, becoming mentors to each other. And just working out what's the difference between, should there be a 2-year gap between them? Should they, what are the factors by which we might select the partners in these mentoring relationships? So then we select against the criteria of recruitment, and we want to recruit people to get people to take part. So why should they do it? Very many organizations have sort of lunch and learn sessions where people can come and along and decide, do I want to be a mentor or mentee or both? Training essential. It's quite clear that if nobody understands why they're there, you're going to get a lot of relationships that don't work. Then to support people while they're in the mentoring relationship, and that could be additional training. It could be just newsletters. It could be all sorts of ways. But finding some way of supporting them, and then when we get to the point where where a cohort ends, and not all programs have cohorts. Some of them are just continuous, of course. But if we have some beginning and ends of a cohort, then we want to make sure it ends positively. We know there's a clear correlation between the quality of the ending of a mentoring relationship and how people see it years later. That leads, of course, to evaluation on a bunch of criteria, but there's criteria for the organization, criteria for the individuals, which could be learning, which could be progress in career or wherever, could be retention from an organizational point of view. So evaluation against criteria set right up in that planning place at the beginning. And then the dissemination of that learning, not just within the organization, but what we're finding through our global community of coaches and of mentors and mentoring program managers, is that we can help each other. That the dissemination of good practice of learning from one program helps people in another program.
Thank you, David. And what we've seen very much with this framework and the previous one is that there's a really clear alignment between the EMCC Global Framework and the International Standards in Mentoring and Coaching Programs. And some of you are familiar with this, of course, and some of you here have used this to accredit the program. But if we consider those previous two frameworks and we look at our core standards that we use to accredit programs, the first are in clarity of purpose, the training and briefing, selection and matching, measurement and review, ethics, administration and support. I think that captures really everything that was in the previous two, although not explicitly within these titles of 1 to 6. I think everything is within there. But I'd say I think one of the key areas, just going back to the previous slide, is the evaluation dissemination. So of course, evaluation, it's a key standard, so core standard 4, measurement and review. And I think that one area where there is a big opportunity is around the dissemination, both internally within organizations and externally. But what I would say is, as we all know, the mentoring community is a very generous community, and we do share resources, and so that does happen amongst individuals and organizations that are here today and beyond, of course. I thought some of you may be interested in the accreditation pathways. We do talk about these and go through these in detail in the book, and both in chapters 2 and 3. And the reason for that is that many of the case studies represented in the book are accredited through one or multiple pathways. Now, what we see here on this slide is we see 3 routes to accreditation. We see accreditation for individuals, with a second row there, and we've got 4 pathways. We've got the training provider accreditation, and again, we've got the 4 pathways there. And then we've got the umbrella accreditation for organizations that have coaching or mentoring programs. Now, of course, with many of the organizations, they may have what we call EIA, so the second column there, individual mentor or coach accreditation in place. And they'll also have an EQA Quality Award training program in place. And when they have a Quality Award training program in place, they'll have that individual accreditation embedded within it. So several of the organizations have what we call triple accreditation, whereby the program is accredited with the International Standards in Mentoring Coaching Programs. They have accredited the training, and they've also then accredited the mentors. What you see there in the third column is supervision accreditation, both with our Quality Award for the training program and then the ESIA for individuals that are practicing as supervisors. We then have the program manager accreditation, so the Quality Award for the training program, and then the IPMA individual program manager accreditation for those individuals that are practicing as program managers. And then we have the newest route, which was 2021, 2023. It took us a year or 2 to develop that. And that, of course, was the team coaching, training and the individual. But we do find that with a number of the case studies, both within the book and, of course, with the EMCC Global, that the key starting point often for organisations is to accredit the training. That's often the starting point. Let's get the training accredited and then recognise the mentors and the coaches with their individual accreditation. They might then look at the supervisor accreditation, potentially. Then they may look at ISMCP. And then more recently, we've had a shift in Programme Manager accreditation as well. But all of those frameworks, of course, are supported with a set of standards that sit within that. And those standards, whether organisations are accrediting or not, those standards can be used to design the training and the programme, and really useful benchmarks to use within programmes. So we thought we'd pause at that point, as we're halfway through. We didn't want to take up any more than about 30 minutes on just sharing the book and the accreditation and a brief outline of the case studies before going into the dialogue to look at your questions and what's brought you here today, and then spend some time answering those in the second part of the session. So I'm going to take the slides off the screen. And hopefully Chandana's in the background, just looking at theming some of those. And of course, we do have a number of our case study contributors here today. So it might be appropriate to bring, whether that's Andrew or Kathy or Sarah or colleagues in to share some of the programme practice that is illustrated in the book as well, if colleagues are willing to do so. Chandana.
So thank you. There are 5 themes that I've picked up from all the chat messages. The first one is around accreditation, so mentoring accreditation. And Julie, I think you covered some of that in the last 2 slides as you went through the different accreditation. So there are several questions around specifically from colleagues who have not had any accreditation. What does it even look like? Is mentoring accreditation and program accreditation? There are then some some of the comments are about program development. So this is about colleagues who are in the process of developing current program in different contexts. People have mentioned entrepreneurship, women's programs. So there's a program development theme there. Then we have another theme, which is around evaluation and measurement. And I think just to say here that all our 22 case studies share examples of their evaluation method, if you like. Some have more than one method of evaluation, but they share that. So there's the rich evidence of how organizations or programs are evaluating their current program. So some of that will be in the details of the chapter. There is some interest in AI, use of AI within mentoring programs. And just to say, in our case study, we have 3 case studies who are using AI. London Hire UK, they are using AI to match mentor-mentees. Mosaic is also doing that with the matching, and the manufacturing company, they are using AI very much in terms of some of the program management in general, generating all the communication through our AI app. So we have some examples of there already, but there may be no specific questions. And then finally, we have a wider theme around professionalization of practice. So much more wider around people wanting to just be here and understand more about program management or mentoring in general. So 5 themes altogether, Julie.
Thank you. So perhaps if we take each one and look at some of those questions specifically and perhaps give a bit of an overview, and if we perhaps divide them up. So the first theme there was around accreditation. So there were some questions around individual accreditation and program accreditation. So perhaps if we start and we look at that first of all, I'm just for a moment going to pop the slide back up that I was showing you earlier about the different routes. So let's go back to this one, if I may, just for a couple of minutes. So on the left-hand side, if we look at column 2, so let's look at mentor coach individual accreditation and then the quality award training accreditation. So there are 2 routes for individuals to become accredited with EMCC Global. So one is that you can attend an accredited training program, so a quality award training program, and the individual accreditation is usually embedded within that. So at the end of the program, provided you complete the program and you meet what we call the practice criteria, you would then be recommended for your individual accreditation by the training provider, and that individual accreditation comes directly from EMCC Global. So you'd receive that. So you'd receive a completion certificate from the training provider that says, congratulations, you completed the training program. The training provider then sends a list of their graduates to EMCC Global, and then EMCC Global accreditation would write to you. And once paid for the individual accreditation, it's a congratulations, and that contains all the information about your individual accreditation, including renewal date, which is 5 years, and then the key documentation that you need to maintain within that. Now, for programme accreditation, just going back to the second route for individual accreditation for a moment, the other route is that you can credit based on your prior experience. We actually run a number of sprint challenges as well. So I think is there one currently running, Nicola, or there's one coming up very shortly?
Yeah, I was about to put the link in, actually. It's coming up early part of next month, and we are still accepting applications. I'm going to put that in chat.
Oh, fantastic. Chandana, do you want to say a few words about the sprint challenge and prior experience?
Starts on the 8th of September, so it's quite soon.
Oh, super, thank you. Chandana, do you want to say a few words about the sprint challenge?
So I did pick up one question around becoming an accredited mentor, and if there's any other professional body apart from EMCC offering this. So EMCC is obviously one of the professional body that recognizes mentoring and coaching at par, if you like, and our standards cover both mentoring and coaching all the way through. The Sprint Challenge is a great opportunity to get yourself accredited at an individual level, particularly for those people who are coming with lots of experience of mentoring, but you haven't, for whatever reason, looked at the accreditation route. The 5-day Sprint Challenge is facilitated currently over 5 evenings, UK time at the moment, but we can share that the details have been shared by Nicola, where you will be in groups of small groups facilitated by experienced assessors, where they take you through the requirements of the application and support you to relate your current practice in mentoring or coaching to the requirements. So within the 5 days, you have clarity on what is required. You also are able to use those sessions very much for your own reflection and thinking about your role and your different aspects of your mentor role. So the process becomes, frankly, very painless, because you can understand and discuss it with groups who are similar to you in terms of experience, and then that supports you with your individual accreditation. So if you're particularly interested in individual accreditation and want to give yourself some headspace, 5-day Sprint Challenge is highly recommended.
Super, thank you. Then for programme accreditation, for each of our routes, there are 4 levels of accreditation, as there are with individual accreditation. We have foundation level, which is those that's beginning their practice. And typically a foundation level programme might be somewhere between a minimum of 20 hours, but typically 20 to 30. We then have a practitioner level, which is equivalent to a level 5 higher education. And typically a programme would be 150 hours. We then have senior practitioner, and that might be equivalent to postgraduate level. And that's moving towards the 500 hours, and then master practitioner, where again, that would equate to postgraduate level. And for individual accreditation, there's some additional criteria there around sustained impact and contribution. Typically what we find is that you'll see with training providers, and Nicola could pop the link in if you wouldn't mind, for how you see training providers on the EMCC Global website. There's a link, and you can browse our training providers. You'll see the majority might start off with a foundation program, then they'll transition to a practitioner program. In some cases, our training providers will provide foundation practitioner, and there are others such as David and CCMI that provide foundation practitioner and senior practitioner. So the 3 levels across the board. Yep. So Nicola, hopefully we'll pop the link in there and you can have a look at that. Okay, so let's move on to the next theme then. So there's a theme around programme development. Was there anything specific there, Chandana, around programme development?
So these are colleagues who are currently looking at development programme within their organizations. I wondered if anybody from any of you that put in the chat want to ask any specific question. Just to say, as Julie went through chapter 3 of our book, really goes into the details of program management in general, in terms of the core standards for a program manager and building a program. What are the different threads that is essential to look at, starting from purpose to evaluation, but maybe inviting, because we haven't heard from any of you yet, so it'd be lovely if anybody has any specific questions around program development to maybe unmute and just share your thinking or what you would like to know.
Hi there, Martina here. Yeah, I'm one of the people so I'm creating a program as part of an independent organization in the City of London. And I guess my question was, so we've got quite a lot of people potentially interested in being mentors because, you know, they have the experience and they've done the time in the city. That doesn't necessarily make them a good mentor. Just because you have the tenure, and I see both David and Julie smiling there. And I guess it's how do you manage that? You don't, you know, and I guess it's so subjective, like how do I, because I'll be a joint program manager. How do we manage that? And also, yeah, I guess, you know, it's so subjective. So, you know, how can I think that somebody's not suitable, or yeah, just any guidance around that would be great.
Okay. Yeah.
David.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. This is the perennial problem. And I saw another few comments that relate to this in the chat as well. That there is pretty much no point doing a mentoring program if you don't train the mentors and the mentees, but both of them in their roles. It's just the chances of getting more than 30% of the relationships delivering any value are pretty small. If you can include in your training some observation of people in the role, you very quickly get an idea of who just doesn't know how to shut up, or who hasn't got the message, and then you basically offer them some additional counselling, basically some additional support, and you may not. It's always a good idea to have more mentors than you need, so that you never quite find the right person for that individual if they don't know how to shut up. I mean, it's a little Machiavellian, but it seems to work. When we're doing it by webinar, it's much more difficult. And I don't. Is your program going to be face-to-face training, or?
It's a hybrid. It's really down to what works for the mentor and the mentee.
Yeah. Okay. So you could have a choice of training them together. In which case, one of the exercises we find enormous fun, is getting each side to design the mentors to design the mentee from hell, and the mentees to design the mentor from hell. It's one of my favorite exercises to get them to actually realize, you know, what you don't want.
Yeah, that's great.
If you what I suggest, if you want to go into much more detail on those specifics, then we can organize a conversation. I can let you have some other materials that would be helpful.
Thank you. That's really helpful. But I like that, even to have facilitate that conversation of the mentor from hell and the mentee from hell. So yeah, at least they've thought about it as well.
Yeah, I still think my favorite, and Julie knows this, is the mentor on the first meeting with his mentee. The mentee comes into the room and starts talking about a problem he's got, and the mentor says, "You think you've got problems?"
Yes. Yeah. You don't understand my children, or whatever the problem is. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thanks, Martina. Thank you, David. And Rupinder, you have your hand up. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was very, very informative, and thank you, David, for sharing that wonderful, wonderful exercise. My question is largely around what Martina was saying. As we speak, I'm currently running a program for 200 partners of a consulting firm, which is on mentoring per se. It's a skill building program for 3 months. It's an online program. And my current struggle is twofold, I think, which will largely revolve around chapter 3, as you spoke about. The first one is, and I can relate so much to what David said earlier about can't shut up, right? And these are very elite people any which ways. But my current struggle is around engagement. How do I keep the senior mentors engaged to the duration of the program that it's running? Because life is happening, and it's happening at a very, very great speed and complexity for them. So that's one, continued engagement of mentors. And number 2 is the evaluation bit, which is, it's really not about how good was the content of the program and the participants' experience of the program content. It's really about how do I tie it back to business impact in one form or the other. Some concrete suggestions will really be helpful.
One of the things that we found really helps is to, particularly if these are senior people, they're going to retire in the next 10 years, is to tie the program to accreditation as a professional mentor. So with their practitioner mentor accreditation, many of these people, they don't want to become consultants. They don't want to become coaches because they see that as too prescriptive. But the idea of using their wisdom, their knowledge, experience in a productive way, being a professional mentor is something different. And so linking it to the engagement of it, this is something that's actually building your next career. It won't be for everybody, but I think for people with a developmental mindset, shall we say, it's quite an attraction.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
If you want to dig more deeply into that, we can do that. Just contact me. We can do that. Good show. Yes.
I will drop you an email. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
And the second question there, which really brings us on to the other theme that you mentioned, Chandana, around evaluation. And there's all kinds of ways to evaluate a program, and I think that there's various considerations around timing, around resources, around budget, around engagement, and decisions to make as a team as to what's going to work best. And absolutely, you're right, Rupinder. It's key to think about impact. What is the impact of the program? Because ultimately, in terms of the organizational purpose, objectives, and drivers, what both organizations and individuals are interested in is ultimately what's the impact of this. And so it's finding ways to assess that, that work within the time constraints, the budget, the resources that you have as a program individual or a program team, and weaving that in very much from the outset of the program. So I know in our framework, David, you talked about it's continuous, and absolutely all those elements we're doing all of the time, really, in terms of recruitment, matching, training, evaluation. But it's there up front at the beginning so that participants know exactly what to expect and when to expect it. And it's built into the program, so it's not an afterthought at the end. Yeah. Chandra, we had 2 more themes, and I'm conscious of time. We've got 5 minutes for the main part of the session, then we're going into a half an hour of networking. So did we just want to finish with a couple of points there, Chandra, around the last 2?
Yeah, I was just thinking that given that we've got 5 minutes, maybe there was some interest in AI. I was going to invite David in to say, just share in terms of you've got a chapter there on use of AI, but if there's some key messages you want to share with us as we finish, and then the professionalization or more wide. So hopefully we've addressed some of that as we've given examples and talked through.
Super, thank you.
Very, very brief. So the critical question with AI is how do we actually partner with it rather than let it take us over? And so there's a growing understanding now, and we've got an EMCC working party looking at this. And there's more knowledge coming out about this. I just had a session this afternoon with somebody doing their master's degree on AI and ethics, or the ethics of AI in coaching and mentoring. Quite fascinating. So just being aware that this is something that can help us, but shouldn't dominate. And so we shouldn't release the responsibility for the conversation that we have with people to the AI. We have to, so we need to be AI literate, if you like, but as long as we're in control, it's fine. The moment that the AI takes over, then we're the robot.
Thank you, David. Well, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this session today. I know a number of you do need to leave, so thanks so much for coming along for an hour. We're so looking forward to the publication of this book, and you'll have the slides and details from Nicola that will be in the new year, so January, February 2026. And of course, you'll get to read. We've got Andrew here and Vlad and Sarah and Kathy, many of our colleagues that have contributed. They've all written really, really wonderful case studies that illustrate the best of mentoring program practice and what's out there. So really hope that you will engage with those case studies, and of course you'll be able to contact all of them individually should you wish to find out more about their case study contributions and what's happening within their individual organisations. Please do stay for the second part, which is half an hour of networking. We'd love to hear more from you and get to know you a little bit more. But for those that are leaving, thanks so much for coming along and sharing this hour with us.